Hi there, Bruce Wallace from Dundee and Victoria Chess Club in Bonnie, Scotland. Now, Jim Crawford from Musselburgh has sent me a game over from YouTube asking for a few pointers. It's a league match where Jim has white playing a guy called Ridland, and I think Jim's a fairly low rated player, much like myself, but I've got some feedback from players at tournaments that say it's these sorts of games that they want to see because they can learn more rather than master games. So let's kick off. E4 from Jim, then E5, knight F3, knight C6, bishop C4. So here Jim is playing the Italian game, or Gucco piano, the quiet game, and black replies bishop E7. Now this is called the Hungarian defence. The normal line here is bishop C5. And for those of you who want some swashbuckling chess, you can try B4, which is the Evans gambit. Bishop takes, C3, bishop A5, queen B3. So a battery there on the F-pawn, queen E7 defending, D4, E takes, and white can't take back because of the pin, castles, bishop B6, then bishop A3. And Kasparov himself has played this line, so don't discount it, sacrificing a pawn in the opening for piece play. However, bishop E7, the Hungarian defence, then knight C3. Alternatives there, D4, more energetic, or the move that I probably would have played, lacking a bit of courage, would have been just castles, getting my king safe. But after bishop E7, knight C3, which is perfectly playable, D6, opening up the diagonal for the bishop, then D4, which is the best move as recommended by Schroeder. Bishop G4, placing on the pin, and then D takes E. Now, another line there would have been D5, although some players would be worried about the knight coming to D4, but then bishop E3, and white doesn't have to be too worried about lines with, say, bishop or knight takes, because then pawn takes, and black has to play bishop F6 because white was threatening to win a pawn with bishop takes knight and then queen takes pawn. So that's perfectly playable for white, so you can think about that one. But after G4, white took the pawn, knight takes E5, then bishop E2, which was the strongest move as recommended by Schroeder. Believe it or not though, there is a line here with the queen sacrifice, with knight takes, allowing the queen to be captured with bishop takes, then knight takes F7, attacking the queen, queen to D7, then knight takes bishop, D5, bishop takes, knight F6, knight takes H8, knight takes E4, bishop takes, queen E6, and then F3, and believe it or not, it's a huge advantage to white. At the moment, white has 6 pieces to black's 3, plus a pawn up. So even that shouldn't be discounted. But after knight takes E5, bishop takes E2, knight F6, knight takes, which is the strongest move, bishop takes E2, and then white played knight takes F7. Now, before knight takes F7, white had an advantage of more than half a pawn here, and definitely the best line was queen takes bishop, pawn takes, and one line, although not the only one, is queen b5 check. Black can either block with the pawn there or the queen has been the options. Then queen takes, b7, castles, knight to d5, knight takes knight, queen takes, and white's advantage is fairly significant. A pawn up, although not as well developed. So definitely there, queen takes bishop, but knight takes f7, and now the advantage swings to black. Bishop takes queen, knight takes queen, bishop takes c2, knight takes b7, bishop takes e4, pawn take, knight takes, and then castles. Now a better move here is f3, nudging the knight. Knight goes back to f6, knight a5, king d7, black not bothering castling, and then another possible move for white here, bishop g5, rook h to b8, attacking the b pawn, and white can even castle kingside here, and there's only a slight advantage to black. But after castles, knight f6, an advantage of over half a pawn to black, rook e1, king d7, bringing the king towards the centre, knight a5, knight d5, bishop d2, maybe not the best. Alternatives there, rook d1 or knight c4. Okay, so bishop d2, bishop f6, and this more or less forces rook b1, rook h to f8, and forces are beginning to line up now on the f-pawn, and black has a target, but white doesn't appear to have any targets in black's position. b3, freeing the rook. Alternatives there, knight c4 or king f1, and we'll see why king f1 later. But rook h to f8, b3, and bishop d4. Two pieces now bearing down on the f-pawn. So rook e2 is more or less forced, then rook f7 preparing to double, rook c1, and this doesn't really threaten anything. The best move here is definitely king f1, stoutly defending, rook e8, and then f3, and although black has the advantage, it's harder to force anything. However, rook c1, and now pressure really mounts on the f-pawn, rook a to f8. So three pieces attacking. Rook f1 is forced, then knight f4, which is a good move, rook e4, and then bishop e6. Alternatively there, c5 cementing the bishop, and it's a very strong piece with an advantage over two pawns, but bishop e6 is playable, knight c4, and black's advantage isn't massive here. Bishop c5, b4 is recommended, and white not playing any bad moves here. Bishop d4. Now here, according to Shredder, the move was in fact rook d1, which almost equalises, threatening to take the knight. So it's would have been worth considering there, but not an obvious move. But after bishop d4, g3, and now the best move for black is bishop takes f2 check, which is decisive. King takes, knight to g6. Was there an alternative to king takes f2 there? Well, in fact there was, but with decisive advantage to, let's see if there's an alternative. Well, it's actually saying here king f1, but big advantage to black. But after bishop takes, king takes, knight g6 check, and black's coming under fire from black's heavy pieces. Bishop f4 temporarily blocks, knight takes, pawn takes, rook takes check, and here basically white is forced to take. Rook takes back, king must move, and regains the piece with advantage. 2 pawns up and an easily won endgame. This d pawn is passed and will be very difficult to stop. So just move through the end of the game. Oops. Rook f7 check, king c6, a3, rook c3, rook comes back, and with the rook's coming off, it's an easy win, and the d pawn just marches now. Queens, and white resigns, and I thought that was actually quite a good game for both sides there. White's mistake, if he was looking for some pointers, was in the move after bishop takes e2, knight takes f7. Definitely the better line there was queen takes e2, with advantage to white. So a bit of a speculative move that, knight takes f7, which ended up handing the advantage over to black. But I hope you enjoyed that, Jim, and wish you luck in your next game. See you soon on YouTube.